Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to invite our distinguished speakers, General Anil Chauhan, Ambassador Shyam, Saran, and Shri N.N. Vohra to the dais. May I request all the distinguished speakers to come to the dais. Meanwhile, may I request everybody to keep their mobile phones on silent mode. It gives me a great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed speakers this evening. The India International Center is deeply honored to welcome General Anil Chauhan, PVSM, UYSM, AVSM, SM, VSM, Chief of Defense Staff, who will enlighten us on the theme Future Wars and Indian Armed Forces. You may recall that on September 15, 2021, this very center in the multipurpose hall hosted the inaugural Chief of Defense Staff, the late General Bipin Rawat, who spoke on towards progressive defense reforms. The session was chaired by Shri N.N. Vohra, the then president of IIC. That landmark event, seamlessly blending physical and virtual participation, set a precedent for today's critical discourse on national security and strategic affairs. It's my profound honor to introduce General Anil Chauhan, who assumed office as India's second Chief of Defense Staff on 30th September 2022. As the pivotal leader of India Tri-Services, General Chauhan oversees the integration and coordination of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, ensuring seamless synergy and strategic foresight. A distinguished leader, his military career spans nearly 4 decades. Commissioned into the 11 Gorkha Rifles in 1981, General Chauhan is an alumnus of the National Defense Academy, Khadakwasla, and the Indian Military Academy, Dehradun. Throughout his illustrious career, he has held several pivotal command and staff appointments, gaining extensive experience in counterinsurgency operations in Jammu and Kashmir and the Northeast. As General Officer Commanding-in-Chief of the Eastern Command 2019 to 2021, he demonstrated exceptional strategic acumen. His prior roles include Director General of the Military Operations and service on a United Nations mission in Angola. For his exemplary service, he has been decorated with the Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Uttam Yudh Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Sena Medal, and Vishisht Seva Medal. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a warm welcome to General Anil Chauhan, Chief of Defense Staff. It is also a privilege to welcome Ambassador Shyam Saran, who will chair this evening's session. Ambassador Saran, a life trustee and president of India International Center, has served as India's foreign secretary and the Prime Minister's special envoy for nuclear affairs and climate change. A distinguished diplomat and scholar, Ambassador Saran has led key institutions such as the Research and Information System for Developing Countries and the National Security Advisory Board. For his outstanding contributions to the civil service, he was awarded the Padma Bhushan in 2011. And in 2019, the Emperor of Japan conferred upon him the Spring Order Gold and Silver Star for his pivotal role in strengthening India-Japan relations. Welcome, Ambassador Saran. We are also honored by the presence of Shri N.N. Vohra, past president and life trustee of IIC. A distinguished IAS officer, Shri Vohra's illustrious career includes key positions such as Defense Secretary, Home Secretary, and Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister. As the 12th Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Shri Vohra served with remarkable distinction. He was also the Government of India's interlocutor in Jammu and Kashmir. For his unparalleled contributions to civil service, he was awarded the Padma Vibhushan in 2007. Welcome, sir. I now invite Ambassador Shyam Saran, President of IIC, to deliver his welcome address.
Yeah, sure. evening and welcome to all of you to this very special lecture that we are hosting this evening. May I greet our very distinguished former President of the IIC, Shri N.N. Vohra ji, also our life trustee, Mr. Gopal Gandhi, our two elected trustees, as well as the director of the IIC, Shri Srivastav. And very warm welcome to you, General Chauhan. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to speak to us this evening. General Chauhan will be speaking about future wars and the Indian armed forces. I think that's a very, very relevant topic because today actually we already are in certain present wars which have taken the character of what the future wars would look like. So this is a very opportune moment for us to hear about how the Indian armed forces are really gearing up for what is already a very, very different world from what we have been used to in the past. We are already finding that the wars which we see being fought in Ukraine or in Gaza and Palestine, these are wars which have already taken on a very different character from what we have been used to. We are also seeing the impact of that on societies. So it is not only just a war between countries, but it is also almost like a war between peoples, between societies, and the impact on societies is really something quite unprecedented. General Chauhan, who has taken over some time ago as Chief of Defence Staff, I think the office of the Chief of Defence Staff itself was a response to very changed kind of conditions that we are facing today. There is a certain restructuring of the Indian armed forces taking place to make certain that it is well prepared to deal with the new challenges that we will be facing. So without further ado, let me extend a very warm welcome once again to General Chauhan. And sir, you have the floor.
Shri N.N. Vohra, Life Trustee, former President of India International Center and former Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, former Foreign Secretary of India and current President of India International Center, Shri Shyam, distinguished ladies and guests. 47 years ago, I joined the National Defense Academy and chose the profession of arms as a military career. It's but natural for me actually to speak on a 4G subject, matters military. I'll be speaking, as it said, that on future wars and the Indian armed forces, not because the subject comes naturally to an army officer like me, but because warfare itself is vast and a very complex kind of a subject. And predicting the future of warfare is perilous, to say the least. I believe that the profession of arms is one of the most challenging professions. Unlike other professions, you may be a diplomat, you're practicing diplomacy every day, you're an administrator, you're actually doing administration, you're a surgeon, you're an architect. But if you're an army officer or you've chosen the profession of arms, we don't fight every day. We prepare for war, and that's a big difference. And there are periods of peace in between where you get this opportunity to actually prepare. And one day, you're called upon, and then you're expected to actually win. In wars, there are no runners-up. That's the challenge, actually. And the consequences of failure can be catastrophic for any nation. So for war, you'll actually have to prepare for winning. So in the profession of arms, you have to anticipate conflict. You have to prepare for the right war, strategize, train, and when the opportunity comes, present itself, fight, and fight to win. Allow me to actually start this talk by quoting Little Heart, a captain actually who taught journals. In strategy, he had said, the longest way around is often the shortest way home. He was referring to the strategy of indirect approach. A progenitor and proponent of this particular concept of indirect approach. He believed that only indirect approach succeeds because the opponent is never prepared for such kind of a strategy. And the effects of indirectness, he advocated, lay actually in the psychological domain, although its physical manifestation actually helps in the physical domain. And this actually leads to a non-linear kind of an approach, and this kind of maneuver will lead to dislocation, disruption, and deception of the adversary. But a century before Little Heart, soldiers and generals believed what Napoleon had once said, that in war, morale is to physical as 3 is to 1. That means leadership and motivation were considered as battle-willing tools in warfare. Today, we are at a cusp of a change when technology is about to replace morale and strategy to a large extent in deciding the outcome of war in a significant kind of a manner. Superior technology has always affected morale and motivation. If you have better arms and ammunition, obviously your morale is high. And also, if you have superior technology, then also your application of strategy, you have various kind of options. So in the annals of military history, pivotal moments often hinge on scientific and technological breakthroughs. Today, we are at a cusp, actually, when not one, not two, but large number of technologies are going to influence or revolutionize warfare. Combat, I believe, is increasingly becoming intelligent, digitized, decentralized, transparent, and multi-domain. And warfare is at the threshold of a major change, and we are at the cusp of a new revolution in military affairs. Significantly, this revolution is occurring at a time when global security environment is passing through the most unprecedented turmoil and tumult. The global geopolitics is in a state of flux. The rising uncertainty is forcing nations to review their national security strategies and review their defense budgets. War in Europe and West Asia has overshadowed conflicts in other parts of the world. And in fact, if you look, this could be one of the most violent decades ever since the end of World War II. Militaries across the world are evaluating strategies and technologies being used in these two current wars. Some of them, as said earlier by Ambassador Shyam, are creating disproportionate and disruptive kind of effects. Let me start or talk about actually warfare, the history of warfare and how it has been changing. War and warfare, we all know, is as old as human civilization. It's evolved from confrontation between primitive tribes to conflict between feudal bands and levies of an agrarian society to modern-day armed forces of a nation-state. Warfare has always been evolving up to the middle of 19th century, but two unexpected technologies changed the course of warfare. One was, and both of them actually were not related to warfare. One was the introduction of railways, and second was telegraph. And they could be really called as disruptive kind of technologies. Before that, for centuries, warfare was primarily unfolding into one single battlefield. Armies would converge on one particular battlefield, and the outcome was segregated in a matter of hours or days between the victor and the vanquished. Battles from Kurukshetra to Kalinga, Palasi to Panipat in India, or maybe in Europe if you take Austerlitz, Jena, Waterloo, all were fought on a single battlefield. Command and control of such kind of battles was far more easier, and the outcome, as I said earlier, was decided in days. With the introduction of railways, one was able to mobilize faster and logistically sustain larger amount of forces at great distances. And he could move from one front to the other. So it actually introduced two types of concepts. And second, with the invention of telegraph, another instrument which actually revolutionized warfare, it provided the ability to command and control dispersed forces. It also removed commanders from the battlefield, and now they were replaced by staff. So, sitting away, you could control multiple kind of fronts. So both combined introduced concepts like fronts, so with some manner is actually a forerunner to what we call as theaters today. And war had expanded in terms of both time and space. It introduced strategies like the two-front war, which we are faced today actually. The Germans at the end of, before the World War I actually had introduced something known as the Skiffen Plan. They were wanting to actually subdue France first, and thereafter mobilize towards the east, and then take on Russia because of their limited or primitive kind of infrastructure. They would have taken a long time to mobilize. And for that little time, they also had diplomatically the assurances of this Austria-Hungarian Empire, and that would have given the Prussian army or the German army for time. So you could fight at different kind of fronts at different places of time. But that's all history. I will not talk about that anymore. The post-World War II period actually can be spoken as the era of actually modern warfare. And in this modern warfare, we generally talk about a revolution in military affairs, and I will talk about the first, second revolution in military affairs, which is already there, and the third one at the cusp of which we are there. So the first revolution of military affairs is actually can be called as maneuver warfare, and it came about because of technological advancements in surface and air mobility and long-range artillery. So it introduced things like track vehicles, tanks, self-propelled guns, ICVs, and of course, helicopters. It introduced concepts like air-land battle. The Americans introduced this, or the deep battles of the Soviet era. It was actually a modification or improvement of what the Germans practiced as blitzkrieg during the World War II. Air-land battle or deep battles introduced concepts like non-linearity, simultaneity, synchronization, and tempo in operations. At the lower level, they introduced things like operational fires, shaping of the battlefield, maneuvers like envelopment, penetration, turning movement, projection areas, and disrupting the operational centers of gravity. So this is what was maneuver warfare. When I did staff college, we used to speak about it. These kind of lexicons are all lost now. We moved on to the second revolution in military affairs, which is called as net-centric warfare. And this was introduced by basically three technologies, basically on ICT and computational powers. It was first practiced by the Americans in Kosovo and later introduced for ground forces in the first Gulf War. Net-centric warfare introduced concepts like battlefield transparency at the top level and enhanced situational awareness for the soldiers at the ground level, at the lowest individual. Ground maneuver units were not totally aware of movement and deployment of friendly forces, even in the thickest of darkness and night and sandstorms, etc. So you knew where your forces are. That reduced force-on-force engagement and fratricide. So that was a major breakthrough. And you remember Clausewitz always spoke about fog and friction of war? So that got removed because of this net-centric kind of warfare. Warfare today is at the cusp of the third revolution in military affairs. And as I said earlier, it's because of not one, two, or three technologies, as happened during the first and the second revolution in military affairs, but multiple kind of technologies, ranging from sensors to advanced materials, propulsion, hypersonics, artificial intelligence, big data, quantum, cyber, space. And generally what happens is all these technologies are spoken in one breath. So one gets confused as to how the warfare is going to change. So what I'll do is I'll classify all these technologies under three trends or three heads. And I'll do it and tell you as to how the outcome of war will be shaped because of these technologies. And the first technology under which I will talk about is robotics and automation. So in this, you'll find unmanned systems which are being introduced, or autonomous or automated kind of systems. You have things like manned and unmanned teaming. So a manned platform is controlling number of unmanned kind of platforms. You also have exoskeletal that enhances human performance, and these are all part of this particular trend. So this is one area, robotics and automation, which is happening. And how it's going to change warfare? Warfare till now has always been between two humans, actually. One human may be better armed, you may have better body armor, you may be better equipped with a sword or a lance or a modern rifle. You may be having a better mobility, you may be a charger, a horse, another one could be on an elephant, and a modern fighter could be on an attack helicopter. But essentially combat was between two human beings. We are at the cusp of an era where combat today could be between humans and machines tomorrow, and between machines and machines. The second trend which I have identified, I've called it celerity, which is to do with something with velocity as well as speed. And this is coming about because of technologies like hypersonics, that is glide and cruise, fractional orbital systems that can go around the globe, stealth technologies, which are making things stealthier. This is on one end. On the other hand, you have the slow movers, small cross-section drones actually. They are getting armed, and they are being used in swarm technologies. So that's another trend which is happening. And we have this low radar signature drones, slow movers on one end, and on the other end you have very high speed things like hypersonics, and with intelligent routing, etc. This is making them invisible, inaudible, and undetectable, and hence untargetable. So as I see the era of large platforms like ships, tanks, we're already seeing actually in this warfare. In Black Sea, we have seen a number of large platforms, Russians going out, and the tanks. So the era of large platform probably it needs a review. And maybe the warfare actually, the expansion of the battle phase, space actually is unlimited now. So you could be targeted anywhere across the world. And this is what can be called as ultimate non-linearity in warfare. So you could be targeted anywhere. So this is going to create a paradigm shift in defense actually. So you will require a resilient and a layered kind of a defense, especially air defense. So this is a fundamental change. The third change which is happening, or the third trend, is I think even more revolutionary, and I would call it as intelligentization of warfare. And this is the third technological trend, and this is happening because of improvement in data processing systems with enablers like artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, large language models, supercomputing, edge computing, etc., etc. Its impact is all pervasive. Digitization of battlefield is contributing towards actually its intelligentization, and interlinking and integrating of complex systems and platforms, as also various domains of warfare. So what we are seeing is a gradual shift from net-centric warfare to data-centric kind of a warfare. So a net-centric warfare, the emphasis was on information kind of superiority, whereas in data-centric warfare, the superiority is based on your superiority of decisions actually. So it's a cognitive superiority which you're taking. So if in a combat there were 10 situations or 10 actions two adversaries had to take, the one which is based on artificial intelligence and big data is always taking faster and better decisions. So your decisions are better, so that ultimately you will win. The guy who has this will win in combat. If you remember, I think some time back, the Chinese used to talk that they are moving away from informatized warfare to intelligent warfare. So this is what they meant actually. They're moving from data-centric warfare to, they're moving from net-centric warfare to data-centric kind of warfare. So these are the three large trends in warfare which is occurring. There are other technologies also which do affect all of them. So one is like, say, quantum technologies, which is a niche field and has the potential, again, in the domains of computing, communication, cryptography, sensing, medicines, and much more. So this is going to affect all these, what I said. It may affect robotics, it may affect celerity, it may affect data-centric warfare, and it will affect both offensive and defensive aspects. Similarly, we have advances in material and manufacturing technologies, but these are actually, again, will help, say, celerity as well as data-centric. But essentially, they are sustaining technology. So what they're doing is they are making things smaller, faster, cheaper, and easy to manufacture. So if you have a platform, you have a missile, that will make it lighter, that will make it faster. So these are kind of sustaining technologies which are happening. So what do we call as disruptive technologies actually? What is actually going to disrupt? I spoke about three major trends in technologies. They surely are disruptive kind of technologies, because they will change the way we've been actually fighting warfare. But the effects of this still can be predicted. Means I've been speaking about how these three technology trends are actually going to change warfare. So if we are able to understand the effect of these in battlefield, then actually they're not actually disruptive technologies. The disruptive effects, I believe, will be caused by technologies when you're mixing these three or four technologies with each other. If you, say, mix artificial hypersonics with advanced materials, or quantum sensing with space weapons, so you can target things, at thousands of kilometers, maybe lakhs of kilometers away with pinpoint accuracy. Quantum computing with cyber or network security, artificial intelligence, and autonomous weapons. So this is going to cause a disruptive kind of an effect between these three trends. Let me now switch on to the new domains of warfare. What we are, both these changes which are happening at an unprecedented pace, and we are also transcending into new domains of warfare, that is cyber and space. And I believe that wars, if they happen in future, are likely to be fought on a new domain first. And if not, then it's going to influence warfare in the older domain. And historically, it's been true. So when we had, from maritime domain, always influenced warfare on land. It's also decided warfare by itself, actually, the outcome of war. And when we had developed air as a domain of warfare, that started influencing warfare on land as well as maritime domain. And some of the wars were actually decided in air, like the first Gulf War. So these are new domains of warfare, cyber and space. Maybe in tomorrow's war actually would be fought first in cyber or in the space domain. So this will require new kind of concepts, like today airspace will have to be actually combined with near space. When I'm talking about near space, you're looking at actually hypersonics, you're looking at those balloons which the Chinese had flown, which are flying at almost 100 kilometers, or you're looking at HAPS, that is altitude pseudo systems, and such kind of weapons. So I'll be talking briefly about this space and warfare in cyber. Like cyber, we all know, is actually a synthetic domain, and it's man-made. We don't reside in that space actually to fight in that space, unlike land, maritime, and air. We live there, we fight there, we don't reside there. So it holds significant relevance across the full spectrum of warfare, serving as both a potential tool for state as well as non-state actors. That's a major change actually. So this capability resides also with non-state. As the battlefield gets digitized, which I spoke about, data-centric warfare, and warfare becomes intelligent, it will increasingly be vulnerable to cyber threats. Cyber defense against advanced persistent threats, hence assume importance. So this is going to present unique kind of challenges requiring advanced technological expertise, robust training, strategic foresight, and a coherent framework to ensure effective defense and retaliation. As I said earlier, before cyber, that the space could be another domain, but today we are not still at that level that we still reside in space to fight. So space has these three segments, that's the ground segment, space segment, and user segment. Even the space segment is actually controlled from land. So warfare still would be fought from land, but effects would be on space. And this is going to become important because all nations are relying on space assets for ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, communication, navigation, targeting, etc. All this is happening. And this is, again, going to be a major force multiplier. Both these technologies, I believe, are going to affect the relationship between a leader, the staff, and 3 combat units. That's been essential, actually. There are 3 elements who fight war. There's always a leader, there are combat units, combat support units, logistics, and there is a staff. Now, if you don't have, in space and cyber, this relationship between leader, staff, and combat units is blurring, actually. So you'll have to define what kind of warfare will be happening in future if you are looking at cyber and space. People who are part of combat units may also be leaders in space and cyber because they're controlling things from ground. And they may be a requirement of no kind of a staff. So let's talk about the Indian Armed Forces now, and how are we preparing, or how are we thinking about future warfares. And we all know that we all had been left behind in the first revolution in military affairs, maneuver warfare, or the second revolution in military affairs, the net-centric warfare. And but in the third revolution, which at the cusp of which we are actually, we don't want to be left behind. We want to enter the third revolution in military affairs along with advanced militaries of the world. And we don't want to play this catch-up game forever. So this will require, I think, a different kind of a mindset, a new thinking in the armed forces. It will require 4 I's, essentially, that is being inventive, innovative, imaginative, and ingenious. And excellence, what we're talking about, must permeate to all rank and file. Only a select group of officers, if they are good, that will not help actually. So this excellence has to permeate through all 14 lakh people, right to the last soldier actually. This will also require very close cooperation, collaboration between the academia, scientists, DRO, DRDO, IIT, our defense industries, DPSUs, entrepreneurs, SMEs, and the three services. And now I'll switch on to how armed forces are embracing change to be future ready. The first thing which we'll require is doctrinal or conceptual changes on how we're going to fight future wars. And in this, I'll just list out a few doctrinal changes which we have to think that will be required. One could be, say, joint ISR and targeting grid. So there could be one on future. We should be able to do cross-domain targeting and command. Naval assets being controlled by Air Force when the time comes, or use those assets for targeting. Absolutely essential for future warfare. Integration of airspace and near space, I have already spoken about. You could integrate your maritime domain awareness with under-domain awareness, even with seabed tomorrow. That also becoming future. I also spoke about layered and resilient defense because of the kind of threat which is evolving. And this will, especially in the domain of air defense. And we should be able to fight integrated multi-domain operations. Even to develop these concepts and doctrines will require original thought and our own ideas, the Indian ideas, and not what the West is thinking about. And this will require a lot of studies from the academia, from officers, and absolutely essential for the Indian Defense University. That should be the fountainhead for such kind of ideas or growth. And this framework is absolutely essential. This will also require some kind of an organizational and structural changes. We've already heard that integrated theater commands would lay the foundation actually for this, and this is part of that particular reform. And what is the integrated theater command model? Actually, it's basically separating out force generation from force application. Presently, both these parts are being dealt by one service chief, force application as well as force generation. And even to run an army of 12 lakhs or an air force, which is shorter but technologically high, it's very difficult to run this. It's a full-time this thing of a chief actually. So we hardly get time to look at this new kind of operation. So when we separate out force generation and force application, a separate gentleman is responsible for force application, and he's got command of all three: Army, Navy, Air Force, Space, and Cyber. So he'll be able to do it in an integrated kind of a manner. So that's what we're looking at. So when we talk about theater commands, we also speak about jointness and integration as a prerequisite towards theater commands. Jointness leading to integration, and that leading to theater command. But essentially, theater command is not an end state of this kind of reforms. So I believe that theater commands is actually a beginning of this set of reforms, which will lead you to fight these kind of wars which I was speaking about. So it's just a beginning. A theater command would just be a beginning of next set of reforms. We also will require joint structures, whether it is for ISR, I was spoken about, I think logistics I've spoken about. Air defense networks, they have developed separately, so they have to get integrated, Army, Navy, and Air Force. Their air defense network should be done. So there are a number of areas in which we have to change, actually. The third change that I can speak about is a cultural kind of a change, and this will relate to something like Jointness 2.0. I've been speaking about this. So this is developing a joint culture in the three armed forces. All the three services have evolved separately since independence. So today, the Air Force had its own culture, how they behave or they work around, and the Navy has its own culture, and similarly, the Army has its own culture. There's nothing known as a joint culture. So even if we put these people together in, say, headquarter IDS or SFC, they still actually think slightly differently. So we have to get this thing a joint culture, which, of course, I understand that developing culture takes time actually to develop, because it involves changing traditions, new traditions, actually symbology. There are a lot of issues involved with it. So we're working towards creating a joint culture, which I said is Jointness 2.0. It will also require some kind of physical changes, which I say is Integration 2.0. And we have identified a number of initiatives to foster integration. And some of these 8 verticals are in operational and intelligence domain, communication and IT, operational logistics, training, human resources, administration and legal aspects, maintenance, and capability development. So here, in all these 8 verticals, it's not 1, 2, 5, 10. We have identified almost about 180 odd initiatives, which will integrate the 3 services together. And when I say integration, it's a physical kind of an activity, which will lead to finally some kind of an optimization. Optimization in the sense, it will lead to saving of, say, manpower, infrastructure, maybe resources, maybe time, or maybe even processes. So this is what we are looking at. We'll also have to change some kind of our procedural changes have to be brought about. Our procurement cycles will have to be shortened. Fast-track procurements will have to be introduced. So this whole cycle of taking 10 years to get equipment after you identified it, that will not work in future because things are moving rather fast. I think till now, in induction of equipment, etc., we've been thinking of inducting platforms which have specific GSQRs. So we identify a platform, we start chasing it. So that will also have to change. We'll have to invest in technologies and ideas which may not, they may be amorphous and may not be having a definite kind of an end state in future. So this is another thing which we need to change. And the armed forces we have a vision. We are preparing, in the process of preparing a vision, which is something like the nation is also doing for 2047, which will get aligned to the national vision. And the vision is to be an integrated, all-domain force, dynamic and self-reliant in capabilities and thought, ready to respond across the full spectrum of conflict to protect our national interest in concert with other elements of national power. So this is a vision statement. We are working toward the full statement. It will be actually in 3 parts, this whole roadmap till 2047. We visualize it in 3 parts. The first period could be till 2027, which is an area of transition in which structural and organization changes, that is what we think should come about. Then, of course, is phase 2, that's the era of consolidation. These reformed organizational structures should be able to fight the kind of war which I spoke about. That's the second. So that is the area of consolidation. And we have sufficient clarity on this roadmap. This will take from 2027 to 2037. And the last decade, 2037 to 47, is the one which is slightly hazy, not exactly clear, because to predict so far in future in a very fast-changing world is rather difficult. But we want to call this as an area of excellence. In all this, what I said, we'll work towards moving it in a far more efficient and a better kind of a system. So in this conclusion remarks, I would like to say that warfare is a contest between combatants. Technology is, however, the final arbitrator. And the time to change, to embrace change is now. India needs to exploit its Amrit Kal. This will require a correct direction and correct speed. Disha and Gati, both will be important to bring about this reformation of 3 armed forces to be ready to fight the kind of wars which I spoke about. With this, I'll conclude my today's talk. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you very much, General Chauhan. That was a master class in military affairs. I think you have in a very in a manner that makes sense to a general audience, and that was our effort to try and bridge this gap between the general understanding of what armed forces are and what modern warfare is, and how actually the Indian armed forces are getting geared to this new age. You mentioned the importance of a new vision and also a new doctrine. This is something that we have talked about a number of times before. National security is one of the subjects that we constantly have conversations about at the IIC, and our former president has himself brought together a group of national security experts to think in terms of what national security in this modern age would entail. So it is my great pleasure to now ask Mr. Vohra to perhaps engage you in a conversation about national security, and perhaps also ask you to comment about some of the issues that have been raised. Sir, you have the floor.
Shyam, we have roughly about...
15, 20 minutes. 15 minutes, then we'll open out for question and answers to the...
Because of the time, I want to ask only one question. All these challenges that you've spoken about, don't we need a framework to prepare the country besides the defense forces and come back to the question of national security policy? Will that be all right for you? Yes.
It's going to commence now. Be patient. That was very, very good. Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. First of all, I'd like to join Ambassador Saran in thanking General Chauhan for having found time to visit us and speak to us. This visit was long awaited. In summer of 2021, we had the good fortune, despite the COVID and various restrictions, of engaging General Bipin Rawat, and he spoke to us for a good length of time in the other hall we have in the Kamala Devi block. But as it happened, he unfortunately met with a tragic accident and he passed away later that year, before the end of that year. And during the course of our formal as well as informal discussions, General Rawat had promised me that he would visit us again in the ISC and talk to us at some length on what were the developing, evolving concepts or notions of national security policy. Now, all of you heard General Chauhan in the, if I may say so, it's a fairly threatening scenario that he's building up. The wars of future, the wars of tomorrow, cyber warfare, space warfare, and how, he has told us briefly, the Indian armed forces are planning to meet this kind of eventuality. Now, I don't want to go too much in the past because of the extreme paucity of time, but I do want to briefly recall that in our earlier discussions, which were fairly prolonged, several serious discussions, we had admitted that both in the arena of internal security management, post-47, and in the amphitheater of external defense, preparation against external aggression, war, things have not been all okay. We have risen to crisis situations, we've taken piecemeal ad hoc decisions. There has been no evidence of a policy framework. But now, as General Chauhan has told us, things are getting rapidly more and more complex, more and more threatening, and it is not a simple task to say that we will do the following and we will be ready to deal with the world of tomorrow. So I would briefly recall that when 99 took place, Kargil War took place, then we had the Kargil War Review Committee, and then we had the Kargil War Review Committee report, in which it was very distinctly mentioned, specifically noted, that we need to take all possible measures, steps to strengthen national security. And in that direction, the government of the day set up 4 task forces, one on defense, one on internal security, one on intelligence, and when these task forces rendered their reports, there were a series of meetings between the task forces and their chairpersons. And then we had a series of meetings with Mr. Advani, the then Deputy Prime Minister and Home Minister. Then the Prime Minister personally came, and there were long discussions along with the then NSA, Mr. Misra, Brajesh Misra. Now, what surprises me is, again, without going into too much detail, that that time the government of the day was serious in their realization, recognition, and in their motivation. They set up the National Security Council Secretariat, they appointed the first NSA, they appointed the first NSAB, the National Security Advisory Board. I had the privilege of being a member of that board 2-3 years. And besides preparing the task force report on internal security, I had the good opportunity of being asked to also prepare a draft a very bare draft of national security policy. Well, then never saw the light of day. It was discussed, it was agreed to, and so on and so forth, but nothing happened. Then I jump in time and I find that when my friend Shri N.N. was the NSA, National Security Policy was not only drafted, I think it was finalized. And then again forgotten. Then even later, Ambassador Shyam Saran was chairing the National Security Advisory Board, and again prepared a revised National Security Policy draft and several other documents which were very, very relevant. Not only then, I read some of them recently, they are perhaps even more relevant today in the context of what General Chauhan has said. So I was wondering, General Chauhan, what is it that bothers us internally or prevents us or constrains us from at least saying that we want to go ahead and have a national security policy, flowing from which there will be national security doctrines. There will be doctrines for Air Force, for Navy, for internal security management. I don't want to go into detail, but in a nutshell, in 2-3 sentences, I'd say, there are problems that have grown manifold in the arena of internal security. And who is responsible for what has still not been decided. I have been of the view that internal security management is 95% the job of the states and the Home Ministry. And the army should be involved only on very rare occasions like Kashmir and all, where external factors are involved. It's like a warfare. But army should not be burdened, army infantry should not be burdened with the day-to-day peacekeeping, whether Northeast for 20, 30 years now, in Punjab for 15 years, I was there as Home Secretary, Blue Star and so on, in Kashmir since December 89. Now you see it's almost more than 3.5 decades. Therefore, a clear definition, understanding between the Union and the states on what are their respective responsibilities, what they would do. And politics apart, I think this is an arena where we must engage very objectively, apolitically, and have clear understanding of what we should be doing on a day-to-day basis, and not when things go wrong, or we virtually ensure things go wrong, as the preceding antecedent developments before Blue Star. Many things were virtually made to go wrong. And then we ask the army to step in. And when something goes wrong, we abuse the army, AFSPA, human rights, and this, that. I don't think that is what is intended. So I would say that it finally, General Chauhan, that we do need a well-worked out framework, politico-economic scaffolding, a framework within which not only the most immediate stakeholders, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of External Affairs, Ministry of Home, intelligence agencies, they have their mandates, what to do, what not to do, And their accountability should be assessed in terms of this framework. Now, I dare say it's 2024 coming to an end. I have not seen any doctrine or any policy which has oversight of the intelligence organizations, whether internal or external. We have any number of problems. I won't go into that. That's not the purpose of today's discussions. So I would say that this kind of framework is totally necessary, imperative to be able to guide, advise, evolution of a common approach and moving towards common goals. Unless we achieve sustained high levels of economic growth for 10, 15 years, we cannot garner those kind of surpluses which are needed, General Chauhan, for providing for your purposes. Where will those millions come from? And side by side is the axiomatic truth that no development growth can take place meaningful unless there is peace and normalcy in the country. So internal security management as a factor is a huge factor in national security. Sure. You can't put it aside and say this is a different segment. The DIGs and DGs can do what they like. The Central Armed Police Forces, they're almost the strength of the Indian Defence Forces now, 11.5, 12 lakhs. They are border guarding forces, they are internal security forces. Border guarding forces are overnight called back into do internal security management. They are not trained for that, they are not meant for that. Leave aside the legality and the constitutionality of forces created by Acts of Parliament to be shifted around overnight or added in strength without a clear focus, a clear doctrine of what is the doctrine of internal security management, what are the responsibilities of the states, what is the responsibility of the union on a day-to-day basis. Why can't the states get together and several states in a particular geographical zone collaborate, cooperate, and work together, share their forces, armed forces, especially armed forces, and deal with the large problems like drugs, like drones across the LOC. So we need a guiding factor, therefore we need a framework, a scaffolding within which to contain all this activity. So particularly I'm concerned about in a country of our size with the 1.5 billion people shortly, thousands of communities, thousands of languages, all the religions in the world, and socio-cultural and religious traditions with thousands of years old. So divisiveness or disparity, discord are inherent in our existence across the country. Now Manipur has been burning for nearly 2 years now. Is it the responsibility of the Home Ministry? Or is it somebody in Delhi who is responsible? Our Prime Minister goes to the frontier state of Punjab and the state police can't look after his security. Our Home Minister goes to West Bengal and central police forces have to provide him security. What kind of union-state relations are we having? I'm more bothered not about the political side, about the understandings on the security side, internal security, and part of the overall national security. In case of a war taking place, a conflagration taking place, will the state stand apart and say that under chapter so-and-so we just have the responsibility for police and public order? This is a union's business? No. When a war takes place, every living being in the country has to be part of the effort. So when we talk of national strength, comprehensive national power and all that, it has to be conceived within a framework. And then all the forces in the country, especially all the departments, ministries and agencies of the Government of India, they have to work with great cohesion to achieve the goals with the sensitivity of national security at the back of their minds. And the entire country, the states, have also to stand by, they have to play their role. And there has to be somebody who's to question them at the end of the day. So I will not go on And I would end up, General Chauhan, by requesting you to tell us, in as simple words as possible, why is it that you as CDS feel that there is no compulsion to have a policy? And I may be wrong, but I read some weeks ago, not very long ago, that at some function or some meeting, you had expressed opinion, excuse me if I'm wrong, that we do not need a written national security policy. If I'm wrong, please ignore this, but if I'm right, please speak, comment about it. So thank you very much for listening to me. I wish I could have explained my worries in a greater length, but then we have come here today to hear our guest. Chauhan Sahab.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I think you have pointed out something which is perhaps is almost self-evident, that the complexity, General Chauhan, that you talked about in terms of military security. There are so many moving parts that unless you have a framework, unless you have some kind of, and you yourself said that there perhaps need for a new doctrine for the armed forces. This is something which appears to be indispensable at this point of time. So perhaps if you could make a few remarks responding to Mr. Vohra, and then after that I will take a few questions from the audience.
Thank you, sir. I'll try and explain how I understand national security is. So I have always visualized national security in terms of three concentric circles. National security has the largest remit, and it involves activities of a different kind. So they may lie in diplomatic domain, technological security, such kind of activities, or maybe intelligence activities. So how do you secure a nation? That will give you a national security policy. That's the outermost layer, actually. A middle layer would be how do you defend your nation? And that particular part would involve issues like defense manufacturing, Atmanirbharta, or creating general awareness amongst normal citizens. And I won't say militarization of the society, but as citizens we should be aware what should we be supposed to do actually during warfare. So such kind of activities would fall in the remit of defense and would help you derive a national defense strategy. And the core of all this, which is the remit in the smallest, is actually military preparedness. That is our bread and butter, the three services. And we actually spend most of our time in this military preparedness. When I'm saying military preparedness, it is not only procurement, training, understanding, strategizing, war gaming, and all this. Unfortunately, all these three, like the scaffolding which Shri N.N. Vohra ji mentioned, there is no transition. So like military officers are so engaged in this military preparedness part, they're not looking at how do you defend your country? Forget about how do you secure a country. And similarly, people who are interested with the defense part of the country, largely bureaucrats, they're not worried about what is the military preparedness of the country. So this, unless we have this cross-domain awareness and understanding, that will help us to do this scaffolding. So we must have this clearly. Now, you're right, sir. At times I have said that, that national security policy, do we require a written document or there exists a national? So a nation doesn't function in the absence of a policy. That's what I believe. So there could be a written policy, there could be processes, and there could be structures. So the structures are there for decision making. And when I said this, I said it in context of two actually examples I gave. One was Pakistan, who had issued a national security policy. And within months of issue of that written document, actually, they went into economic turmoil, political and social and otherwise. So that is just within months of issuing a particular document. So the issue of that document, a written policy, that did help because the structures were weak. They didn't have policies, may not be written. And second example I gave in context of Israel, a nation which is most threatened in this world. They don't have a written national security policy. The one they wrote was in 1956. Ben Gurion wrote it, very small document. And they have not issued any national security policy. They have survived this. So in that context, I said that there could not be, we can do away, as long as our structures are strong, our processes are strong, and we have functioning in a framework of policy. So everyone is clear about what is his role and what is his goal. If the military is very clear as to what it's supposed to do, he may not still be understanding how defense or how to secure a nation, but as long as he's doing his core task well, we should be able to. And we've been able to get over problems like Article 370. We implemented it when we revoked it. So we did it without any major issues. So we were able to withstand COVID, 1.4 billion people, most chaotic if you look at them. No one could have thought that we would have survived this kind of COVID, but at the end of it, we actually became a COVID mitra for the whole world, COVID diplomacy. We were able to survive that. And how did we do it if there were no structures, there was no policy and there were no processes? That existed, sir. So I was saying it in that context that these structures have to be strong, people have to understand their policies, these linkages between them. Constantly, military should be involved in the bureaucracy and people who are working in national security. If we are involving them constantly and not working in silos, this will function. Yes, one can't say that we will become a developed nation 2047 and we still can't have a written document. There will be a time, sir. People are working on it, so they'll issue that one.
Working.
Sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, General Chauhan. That's quite reassuring, I would say. I think in the context in which we were looking at national security was that, as I mentioned, and you acknowledged that we are living in such a complicated kind of a situation today, with so many moving parts, as I said, that if you need what is called a whole of government approach, then you need some kind of a whole of government kind of framework, as Mr. Vohra was mentioning. We have now about 15 minutes or so for question and answers. May I exercise my privilege as chairman to ask maybe the first question to you? You mentioned, sorry, sir. Yes, sir.
You close the chapter on national security?
No, sir, you can reopen it.
No. After General Chauhan said that they are at it, they will take his word, and then on that basis I propose that, go no further in harassing him. But the fact remains, Chauhan साहब, कि कुछ ना कुछ तो ढांचा चाहिए ना. नीयत ठीक है. फिर नीयत के साथ ये 150 करोड़ लोग जो हैं, फिर क्यों जगह जगह ये गफलत हो रही है, क्यों लड़ाई हो रही है, झगड़े हो रहे हैं, मार पिटाई हो रही है. So these discords can churn out into large-scale disturbances, which would perhaps be more costly and worrisome than a war. A war could be 5, 10, 15 days of the kind you are telling us. The space and cyber wars won't last 3 months. Khatam ho jayega मामला हफ्ते के अंदर within the weekend. And now we are corroding our barrel with these problems. And unless there is a focus, and most specifically, you are the Secretary of Defense and you are my successor, I am your predecessor. Is there an understanding between the Home Secretary and the Defense Secretary on where the balloon goes up? Who is the first responder? This is not so far happened. People wait and watch with the crisis group meetings here and there. But then, I mentioned briefly in passing, Manipur. Is the MHA responsible, or now Army going to be made responsible? And on what terms? Has the Army ever questioned, which I have been suggesting to them, that when they are asked to the military aid to civil authority, what are the terms, for how long, what is the objective? You clearly stated in Op Rakshak, Op Rhino, these objectives were never stated. फौज बैठी है 12 साल तो बैठी है, किसी ने पूछा ही नहीं. The problems continue. So I would strongly urge that while you say that things are okay, generally you feel happy, things may go wrong in a major way unless there are systems and understanding. And the states especially, don't ignore them. लोग तो वहाँ रहते हैं ना, तो यहाँ 2.5-3-4 करोड़ छोड़ दीजिए NCR का, तो 145 करोड़ तो रहता है स्टेट्स में. Now, their politicians, their cabinets, their chief ministers, their bureaucracy, what is their understanding? What is national security? They can't even maintain public order, which is a constitutional mandate for the states. So I'll leave it there. Shyam, bataiye.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I think the point that has been made is pretty clear. So whatever you can do in terms of, making sure that in terms of looking at military security as part and parcel of a broader challenge that we are facing, the aspect of an overall national security, which is not an internal document, but which is also open for public debate, I think that becomes very important. So the question I wanted to ask General Chauhan was that you mentioned in terms of modern warfare the dimension of space, and you mentioned the dimension of cyber as part and parcel of the technological transformation which is taking place. I noticed that you did not touch upon the nuclear issue. So there is a nuclear dimension also which impinges on decision making as far as the armed forces are concerned. Where does that fit in terms of our preparedness?
That would be slightly difficult to answer, sir, for me. Primarily because of two reasons. And I would be clear that armed forces and by and large been kept away, except for the SFC part, and they are quite compartmentalized. So even if you have SFC officers from the armed forces, they are bound not to share anything with the armed forces, actually, who are in the conventional domain. So there are two separate verticals. So that's a challenge, actually. So armed forces officers, 99% who are in the conventional domain, we've decided that it will work slightly differently and that will be controlled differently. The only place where they converge probably is in the area of CDS now. So I would be aware now after taking over as CDS as to what capabilities, what are there. And I also know how conventional war is getting prosecuted. So that's the only linkage we have. Otherwise, for rest of the army, they function like that.
Shyam, you mentioned that in the total reckoning, space, cyber, so and so, this is a factor, whichever way you refer to it or describe it, is not a matter for day-to-day discussion in public. The SFC, what mandate it has, what is the line of control, etc., that we are not asking. But yet, it has to feature in the orbit. And under what circumstances this particular component will become active. Yeah. All that, I think. Yeah.
Okay, let's open this up for some questions. I'll take 3 questions together, and then I will ask General Chauhan to respond. Yes, please. Please identify yourself. Please ask a question. Do not make a comment. Please.
Sensei Raj, founder of Vision India 2032 and also an advisor to the USI. Primary question, well, I'll make my remark first very briefly. Now, you did mention about the unified command structure, which is being worked on in terms of Mr. N.N. Vohra already elaborated on that, the doctrine and the policy and the structure. The question comes in, I did not hear anything about this supply chain management, not the internal one, supply chain management. Be it domestic or global. Now, is there any concerted efforts, even the thinking structures in consolidating this? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. General, a very straightforward question. Are there any lessons from the Ukraine war that the Indian armed forces need to learn?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, General. I think possibility of India fighting a war is on the two fronts, either individually or both together, that is Pakistan and China. Have you made any assessment as to how they are thinking their future wars and what kind of a challenge they will confront India.
Okay. Would you like to respond to these? And then we take
Obviously, sir, I'll take the last question first, that all countries, means any professional army would be preparing for the future. And that's I said, once you join the professional arms, you're not practicing every day, but yet you're preparing every day. So I did briefly mention that this theater command thing, restructuring and all, Chinese did it almost about 9 years back. They have been talking about informatized warfare, and that's equivalent to net-centric warfare, which I said. And then they're saying that they will be moving on to intelligentized warfare. That is something data-centric warfare, which I alluded to, which helps you take better and faster important decisions to win that particular cycle of combat. So so we actually, even if they're not, we should assume that they are also preparing for a future kind of a conflict, even if they're not. So we will be better prepared for such kind of eventualities. As far as the Ukraine war is concerned, Ukraine or the war in Gaza, there are lessons at every level. Means the operational lessons, there will be lessons for armor, there will be lessons for artillery, there will be lessons for the Navy, there will be lessons for the Air Force, air defense, and lessons at operational level, strategic level, and tactical. There will be lessons for structuring, reorganization, there will be lessons for command and control. So every arm and service has drawn its lessons out of these wars, and they are in the process of refining their strategies or tactics, so they're being taken into account. Your question was related to supply chain management. Maybe, of course, this particular conflict has disrupted this because people are talking about de-risking or de-linking from existing supply chain management, and suddenly there's a surge of requirement of various types of arms, ammunition, which has caused a major kind of a disruption. So supply chain management, we have to look at 2 or 3 aspects, and what we are doing about it, partly I had covered in the integration part, in which presently all the 3 services are actually have their own inventories and own way of demanding things and procuring things, all 3 services. What we are looking in future is visibility into each other's inventories, so that we can save on our demands, stocking, buffer stocks, so that will lead to huge savings. So that is the internal matter. When we look at supply chain management of our platforms which we have, so till now we had an inventory which is largely imported. That means either from the Russian side or some things from the Israelis, French and Americans. So today there is fair amount of visibility on your tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers of every equipment. So you're procuring something from Lockheed Martin, you will know who are their tier 2, tier 3 suppliers and which geographies they are located. So you have to do a little bit of research. You can predict as to how your supply chains will get affected, especially in the context of long wars which are presently being fought. So that's a separate subject. How do you manage external your supply chain management? Internally, you got to integrate things together so that we look at a comprehensive. And this integration is not limited to 3 services. Probably once we finish this, we'll take the Coast Guard on board, and maybe at some point of time even extend it to CAPF, whether there's ammunition management, night sites. We can save. So that's what probably you mentioned as a whole of government approach. So that's how we need to be looking at future. It's not just integration of the 3 services. So we have to graduate to something bigger than that.
Thank you.
That's what we should do.
Yeah. Thank you, General Chauhan. Yes, please. Please identify yourself and ask your question. I'll come to you.
Thank you, sir. And I work for the BRICS Institute. My name is Ajat Satru. My question is about China. Are we we got independence in 1947, but now when we look at our map, we believe that we are shrinking. Can we have some transparency on India-China border standoff? Can we have some white paper, something like that? Thank you, General.
Okay. Yes, please. I'll come to you.
I'm Dr. Saran. research fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation. Sir, the examples that you gave about the Pakistan and Israel, I think those two are exceptional examples. Israel is security guaranteed, and Pakistan, what kind of state we know that. But if you look at the best example, for example, the USA, it has a national security strategy. From national security strategy flows defense strategy. From defense strategy also flows other technological, these things. So the structure they have built, the robust structure from, in terms of technology development also. And the national debate and discourse that takes place around the national security strategy. So having that, sir also they spoke about the center-state coordination. Probably, our center state also can, they have much debate around that. So
what is your question?
My question is, having a national security strategy will help, help the robust debate and discussion about that, and also the structural challenges.
Yeah, I think we have already considered the national security issue quite in detail. Yes, please.
General, I'm Captain Dawa. I'm 39 NDA, so that's about 20 courses before you. Now, there's tremendous shortage of aircraft. Yesterday, you were in the IF meeting, Air Force Commanders meeting. I'm sure this must have been great. When is this going to be? We are short of about 10 squadrons, which is a lot. The second question is about Agnipath. There was a lot of opposition when the Agnipath was introduced, and there is still a lot of opposition. So what do you have to say? Will the government reconsider Agnipath withdrawing? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. One more here, please. Yeah.
I'm Saran Chatwal. This is a question addressed to CDC Jen Chauhan. Jen Chauhan, you talked about self-reliance being inbuilt into the strategy. My question relates to the quality. Where does the CDC, your role, how do you ensure that the quality of the self-made, self-reliant equipment is up to scratch? Whether it is the Tejas or whether other things, there are problems in everywhere. And strategically, you may have to do self-reliance, but where does the army and how much say really does the army have? Historically, as we see over the years, there seems to be less and less. When I say army, I mean the armed forces. So how do you ensure that the fighting man and the fighting force gets the best?
Okay.
So the first question related to the map of India from 47, you see it shrinking and shrinking. So if we were on the other side, then we were in China in 1950, had they had look at their map, they would have also found that it's also shrinking, and partly because of us. They claim the state of Arunachal Pradesh. So still their maps are there, but physically we are controlled. So this dispute goes on. So we can't really say that which is correct and which is wrong in the context of China. Military strategy, we've already discussed that, so I will not answer. I'll take on something to do with shortages of combat aircraft, which we are facing, and what are we doing about it. And Agnipath scheme. So, as far as shortages of aircraft is concerned, well, this is high on the agenda. That's the subject of discussion actually during the Air Force Commanders Conference, and various strategies as to how we are going to deal with it. We also need to take on to account parallel developments which have taken place, say in missile forces or air defense systems which we have. So need to take a holistic kind of view, what is the future requirement. Air Force has already worked on this particular document. They have worked out as to what will be their needs in 2047 and what kind of a roadmap. So that's under evaluation at the service at the office of DMA and will be presented shortly to the Raksha Mantri. So there are challenges, yes, and but the need that there's a shortage and acute shortage, that is known. As far as Agnipath scheme is concerned, most of the debate which we hear on Agnipath is not from the uniformed community, but it's from the civilian community, whether it is media or analysts or people who go out on talk shows and all. So The second, I won't say that they have no idea, but the second lot of people who debate this is the veterans actually, army veterans, and who have left the armed forces about 10, 15 years back. The third category of people would be people like me, we are still serving, but then active command of an infantry battalion or a brigade, we've left that about 20 years back. So we are also slightly removed from actual reality. The actual people whose opinion needs to be taken are two actually. The Agniveer himself and his commanding officer, who's actually using him, the commanding officer of an artillery regiment or an infantry battalion or a ship, captain of a ship or a scout commander or a base commander. So those are the people from whom you should ask, okay, what quality of Agniveers are they getting? What is the motivation level of these Agniveers? So probably this will give you a very contrasting, different kind of a picture. So from one spectrum to the other. So where the truth lies is for you people to, one can allude to this fact that it's a good scheme and it's been told on many occasions by none other than our Honorable Raksha Mantri that should there be changes, which is just started and we can't put a change right now. So we'll have a look at it. Self-reliance and quality, there are structures and self-reliance is of course was a need which it was felt late actually. We are already behind. So it's only about 10 years back when we started this Make in India, and now we're saying it some kind of an Atmanirbharta, which is the advanced form of Make in India kind of initiative. Unless we do this, we won't be able to exercise strategic autonomy, and we won't be able to fight future kind of wars which I was talking about. So while I understand that the systems require, cross dependencies, previously we talked about supply chain management and all that, but there are systems like DGQ and all, we should be able to manage the quality of weapons which we get.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have really run out of time, so you will please excuse me. We don't have any further time, and we have taxed the CDS's patients, I think already overtaxed it, I think. So thank you very much, and we will just have the short vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. As we conclude this evening's vibrant discussions, it is my pleasure to invite Shri N.N. IAS retired, Director of India International Center, to propose vote of thanks.
Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, we just had a very enlightening talk by General Chauhan. He mentioned several important, issues during the course of his talk. He brought to our notice that how the warfare is changing. The ratio of morale and strategy, which used to be 3:1, is now undergoing a massive change with the advent of superior arms and technology. He also told us the various important revolutions that have been taking place in the military affairs, how the combat, nature of combat is changing. The combat is going to be now earlier it used to be between man to man, now it is going to be man to man, of course, also man to machine, machine to machine, and things like that. So you have to prepare for that. He told us that net-centric warfare is now changing to data-centric warfare, which we are seeing ourselves. And the two wars which are going on in the world, we are witnessing this kind of change already. He said that besides the traditional area of war, now two more domains have got added, cyber and space. And we have to prepare for that. An interesting thing is that in these two domains, even the non-state actors can also play a very important part. He also told us as to what kind of doctrinal changes are taking place. He mentioned also about the theater commands and how things are shaping up inside the Indian military establishments. We had a very interesting conversation between him and Mr. N.N. Vohra. Mr. Vohra, of course, has been stressing on a national security policy document. And in that connection, he has taken several initiatives. He has delivered several talks here and elsewhere on this issue. During the COVID period, he arranged an online seminar in which military veterans and several security experts participated. The subject was national security challenge of our country, and that has been published as a volume which he was very kind to edit. What is very interesting and rather worrying thing is that in our society we do not debate, do not discuss the national security aspect much. And this is a high time, seeing as what is happening outside, that we start discussing these things. And this discussion will make everybody, even the common citizen, to understand as to what is his or her responsibility towards the national security. Mr. Vohra is very correct to say that though internal security is supposed to be primarily an issue of MHA and states, but when such situations arise, we find that they are totally at loss, they are not able to control, and finally the military has to intervene. But if such a document is there, and not only just the national security document, also the broad SOPs needs to be drawn so that people should understand as to who should act when such a situation unfolds. So friends, on this occasion, it was very interesting, kind of talk and discussion and the questions, answers that followed. I'm sure all of you must have really enjoyed it. And there are a lot of lessons to be taken back from today's program. I would like to thank General Chauhan on behalf of entire IIC family and the IIC management, the trustees, for sparing his time and being with us here and delivering this very, very enlightening talk. Thank you very much, General Chauhan. As I mentioned, Shri N.N. Vohra ji has been stressing on the national security every now and then. And this is one subject which is very dear to his heart, and he is always ready to participate in any discussion relating to national security. And today's event was no exception. I thank you very much, sir, for your guidance and your indulgence in such an important matter of national security. Thank you, sir. I also thank our President Ambassador Shyam, because he is the one who took this initiative to invite General Chauhan, and he has been guiding us continuously to hold very interesting programs like this at the center. We'll certainly do that, sir. I thank you a lot for your initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank each one of you for your gracious presence here. I am sure you must have found it a very interesting kind of program. So we assure you that we will be having more and more such programs in future. And I request once again Dr. Chauhan, General Chauhan to be available to us when we invite him for similar kind of programs in future. We really look forward to your more visits and talks at the center. So thanks everybody, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. I hope it was okay.
Yes, sir. Go from that side or this side? Sir.